Excellent. We've got a great AstriCon. There is just so much good content this year. More than once, in fact, more than 10 times, I've had people come up saying, I want to go to a session, but there's not 2, there's 3 other sessions I want to go to right at the same time. Have you had that feeling?
Yeah.
It's great for content this year. Now watch out, because you can see them all afterwards on video. They're all being videoed, so don't feel too bad if you can't make the one. And speakers, don't feel too bad if you don't get the 100+ people in the room, because they'll all be watching it on the internet afterwards. That's what's going to be happening. So, how many folks here for the very first time at AstriCon? Look at that. I would say, what's that, a third? Maybe a quarter. An extra special welcome to you. We'd love to see you along. Asterisk has been going for 13 or 14 years, and we still get more people coming on every time, which is great. Lots of great sessions, like I said. There is a change on one schedule item I'd just like to tell you about, and that is on Thursday afternoon, in the tutorial developer track, there was a talk by a guy called Thomas. Thomas has unfortunately not been able to come along because of health issues, and so Leif Madsen, let's just have a big cheer for Leif Madsen, has ably stepped in, and Leif will be doing a talk on building subroutines in the dial plan, which we're real pleased about. Talking of Leif Madsen, Leif's one of the only guys that's been to all 10 AstriCons. Anybody else been to all 10 AstriCons? Alison Smith. Well, hey, Mark Spencer, Steve Sokol. Is there anybody else out there that's been to all 10? Just wondered. Isn't it amazing that the people that were at the very first AstriCon are still here? That's a beautiful thing. Okay, a couple of domestic notices. Exhibits start at 10:35. And for those of you wanting to visit sessions in the Kennesaw room, that's on the lower level, on the first floor, or what we'd say in Great Britain, the ground floor. And it's near the front of the hotel, so it's like away from some of the main area. Now, feedback is absolutely key, and there's feedback forms all over the place, so please complete that. I know it seems like a little bit of a drag at the time, but we can only make AstriCon even better when we get to hear what you think, so that's very, very important to us. And it's all about your participation, whether you're an exhibitor, a speaker, a sponsor, we really thank you. And whether you're an audience member, we thank you as well. It's great to have people coming on and participating here. So, we've got another event going on in January the 29th to the 31st over in Miami. That's a great place to be at that time of year to talk about VoIP. It's Digium Asterisk World, so if you want to come along to that, or if you'd like to speak on the Digium Asterisk World track, we'd invite you to get in touch. But right now, I need to kind of move on and get our keynoters up. Now, we've had keynoters from outside before, and we're very grateful for them. In fact, we've got a beautiful keynoter called Phil Edheimer tomorrow, going to talk to us about WebRTC. That's our technology keynote. But today, since AstriCon is 10 years old, we thought it would be nice to get some community members up to keynote with us. And so I'd like to introduce the first of those who really needs no introduction. It is, of course, Mark Spencer. Followed by Olle Johansson, co-creator of AstriCon and one-time contributor. Going to be followed by Philippe Lindheimer from FreePBX, the leader of AstriCon. And lastly, Mr. Alistair Cunningham from Integrics. So it's a kind of time of reflection for us, a time to look backwards, but of course importantly to look forwards too, and we'll be doing that. But before we do, everybody has probably heard a Mark Spencer story or two, but not always from Mark Spencer himself. So I thought we'd kick off by asking Mark just how it all got started for you.
Well, at the ripe old age of 21, I decided I was going to start a company to do Linux tech support. And so, like many college students, didn't have any money, and so I put together my own website, because I put together my own computers, nothing unusual about that, especially today. But among other things, I needed a phone system. They were really expensive. So I thought, well, I can cobble together all this gear that I have from my time as a co-op at Adrian, and just, I can figure out how to get it all into a PC, and then the rest is just software, right? When you're a college student, well, your time is definitely not worth as much as your money. So I thought, well, I'll just sit down and write this phone system. I mean, how hard can it be to make a phone system? So that's pretty much what I did. And then, you know, I was an open source guy. I had done a little program called Game at the time. It's now called Pigeon. So I had a little bit of experience with writing open source software. And so I just made the code available as open source out there. Now, fast forward a couple of years and started to kind of realize that the tech support business was not very much fun at all. But boy, people really seem to be interested in this phone system thing. So we refocused the company around the phone system and changed the name to Digium, and that's pretty much how it got started.
And where would you head then, Mark, when you were thinking, yeah, I'll just build PBX? That's kind of a big old challenge, really.
Well, I think you need just enough knowledge to be able to accomplish what you want to be able to do, and not so much knowledge that you necessarily realize how much work it's going to be to do it. You might never start.
It's a fine answer. Okay, so Olle, Asterisk is around, but I think you were involved in SIP even before Asterisk. Can you tell us about how you got going and also how you found out about Asterisk and began your involvement?
Well, to be honest, I really failed. Don't tell anyone. I want to keep this kind of a secret, but I failed multiple times, and only in times of oil, we all wanted to form service providers and kill the big dragons, the telcos. And we failed to get venture capital, so I had to go back to my own toolbox and find open source tools, and I found something called SIP Express Router, which is now Camelio. But the real fun was when I found Asterisk. You hear voice playing and other things. I failed to get it running together with SIP Express Router and my SIP stuff. So I wrote to the mailing list saying, well, how do I really use this? And they said, read the documentation. I said, where is the documentation? It's in the source.
Nothing has changed.
So I spent 1 weekend taking all documentation out of the source code, putting on a wiki called VoIP Info. And there's a fun story with that, because a few weeks later, Jim, who hosted VoIP Info, told me that I killed his internet connection. He was hosting VoIP Info on an ADSL in Hawaii. But after that, I could actually say that I read all documentation, and I still failed to run it. So I tried to mail on the mailing list to Mark and say, well, there are bugs here. And the answer was, well, you got the source. That's where I got started. But we still failed in that company. I realized that working with Asterisk and helping other guys to fail was a more profitable business for me. So that's what I've been doing since that failure.
Thank you very much, Olle. Moving to you, Philippe. How did you hear about Asterisk and get involved in FreePBX in the first place?
Well, the way I got involved was not quite as interesting as Mark's story. It was the second half of my career, so I think I would have had the knowledge to think, design my own phone system, institutionalize me first. But it was always a priority for me to have a lot of fun in the work I do. And I spent many years with Hewlett-Packard in corporate America. And when I started to get tired of the corporate world and really wanted to do something fun again, I said, what was the funnest thing I've done at Hewlett-Packard? And that was in the early 90s when the European market was deregulating, and I was working across Europe coming up with some really creative, innovative solutions to help the telecom market get through that. So when I left the corporate world, I wanted to get back in telecom. It's the funnest time I had. And I looked around. This was in late 2005, early 2006, when Asterisk was really starting to blossom. I connected up with a couple of very good friends who had a serial experience of doing startup companies. They had actually discovered Asterisk. I dove into Asterisk, and it was just instantly addicting. I think so many of you in here know the first time you looked at it, you played with it, you got connections going, and just the excitement and the thought of the awesome things that you could do with that.
And you know, Philippe, they do look like a bunch of apples. Sorry, carry on.
So anyway, it was really just looking at it and thinking the possibilities are endless. The things that you can do with this, the fun that you could have with it, and and I got addicted, and the rest was history.
So we've heard from
We all
Mark,
got addicted.
who founded
Yes.
the project, We've heard from Olle, who got involved, been a long time contributor as well as co-founding AstriCon. We're going to come back and ask about it in a minute. And Philippe. Now, Alistair is here because Alistair created a kind of a killer app on top of Asterisk. So, Alistair, how did you get involved? How did you find out about Asterisk?
Well, I graduated in 1999 and immediately went to work for a business partner called VoiceRight, installing IVR and voicemail systems for IBM and IBM's customers, all very corporate. I enjoyed it a lot and became a total travel addict as a result, but that's a whole other story. At the same time, I was a Debian developer, reasonably involved in Debian packaging, and I saw on Linux Weekly News references to a development project called Asterisk, and at that time it was hitting version 0.9. Since I was in the telephony business, I installed it in my spare time, was immediately struck by how flexible it was and how powerful it was, especially compared with corporate products, primarily because it was open source, but also because it had a very vibrant development community. So I used it for some test projects, and I tried to get management interested in it, but because they were an IBM business partner, they were really only interested in IBM products. So at the end of 2004, I quit. Started my own company, doing consultancy for Asterisk, and also for other open source projects like MySQL, PostgreSQL, Apache, SER, which is now of course OpenSys and Camelio, and so on and so forth.
And I think we can all relate to that kind of, the first time it dawns on you, the power and the flexibility of Asterisk. That's certainly what got me involved. I came from a very traditional background with CT cards, very, very expensive cards, and the morning it took me like half an hour to knock up something that would have taken a $10,000 card and 4 beardy programmers, and apologies to any ladies in the audience with beards there. 4 beardy program, a month long to knock up. That was really what sold me. So Olle, I want to come back to you. You were one of the co-founders of AstriCon. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, that's an interesting story. I met Steve Sokol at WON, where we both met Mark and Digium for the first time. I think they were called Digium at that time already. And looking around at that conference that had turned into a business event, we really felt that we could do something better and hope that we didn't fail. So we sat down, started to plan, we found a hotel, we signed up for 150 nights on that hotel. And that scared the death out of us. So we said, well, secondary plan is to bring all of our family over to Atlanta to spend Christmas and New Year's. Well, we didn't have to do that. Because as we filled a rental car with all the gear in Steve's attic and headed towards Georgia, we got registrations coming in like crazy. And the hotel confirmed it all. So they actually confirmed way more rooms than they had in the hotel, especially since the hotel was hit by a hurricane and the top floors were gone. So we went into total crisis mode. We brought up Leif and Jared, who helped us to survive. But it was really, really fun, filling a hotel with 500 people and having the first AstriCon. Before the show, we also went to Huntsville to talk with Digium about it. And going back home, we had this distinct feeling that Mark and the gang, Greg and the others, thought we were total fools. This will never ever happen. A conference around this silly software? No way. Well, 10 years now, I think I proved the theory, right?
We did. So Mark, you must have had a few incidences like that where, Asterisk, catching on, and what are the kind of milestones, just one or two, where you thought, it's beginning to grow?
Well, there were a few that I can sort of think of. I mean, first of all, I got to say, I wasn't really the first one to kind of recognize that Asterisk was going to have the impact that it had. There's one guy by the name of Gary Gilmore, who used to work for Dialogic/Intel, that comes to mind, that came to visit us early on when we were still Linux support services. And he kept going on and on about how important what we were doing with Asterisk was going to be. And I remember it sort of seemed odd at the time, you know, it's the end of 2001. We hadn't even really gone very public with Asterisk at that point. But only just another year or so after that, I was at a conference in Dallas and was introduced to the CTO of MCI there. And they said, oh, this is Mark, he's the creator of Asterisk. Have you heard of Asterisk? And the guy just sort of scoffed and said, have I heard of Asterisk? Of course I've heard of Asterisk. Who hasn't heard of Asterisk before? So, you know, a year into it, and clearly that was, for me, that was pretty exciting that somebody would say that. But maybe one of the most interesting sort of recognitions of how big Asterisk had gotten happened just several years later at AstriCon, the first AstriCon we had in Phoenix, actually. And to sort of set the stage here a little bit, at that AstriCon, the hotel wasn't ready when we got there, so they essentially put us in a bunch of condos in this neighborhood. And the VIPs, we all got little golf carts to kind of travel around between the different areas. So the night before my keynote, I was driving the golf cart back from the code zone back towards my condo where I was staying, and as I'm driving down, there's this AstriCon attendee over there, and he sees me and he smiles real big and kind of waves me down. So I drive over there and he goes, "Are you in the hotel? I need to ride to the pool." And that's when I really realized that Asterisk had gotten so big that you could come to an event like AstriCon and just be there totally for the software and not just for all the people you got to hang out with. So
Good story. Okay, so Alistair, we got to the part of the story where you were a job and you'd started up on your own. When did you get the feeling that things were gaining traction for your Asterisk business?
So I started doing the consultancy at the end of 2004, beginning of 2005. I'd intended to do some Asterisk work, some database work, some web work, but it very quickly became apparent that everyone who was coming to me wanted the same thing. They wanted a multi-tenant platform for offering hosted PBX services with billing and invoicing and so on integrated. So the third or fourth customer who came along, I said, why don't we make this a product? We'll give you it in stages and you can pay us in stages. So they said, sure, why not? They became the launch customer. The first code was written, I think, about May of 2005 or so. And we had version 0.1 about August. One day in early September, the owner of that company phoned me up and said, we put our first paying customer on your system today. And I said, you did what? It's nowhere near ready. You mustn't do that. And they said, oh, don't worry about it. This is a very friendly customer. They don't mind a few glitches. And I said, well, okay. So we spent the next 3 months basically working every waking hour to get it ready for actual use. And by the end of 2005, we had something pretty decent. And we had something I could call version 1, maybe by the middle of 2006. And we originally called it ITSP in a box, which is a truly terrible name, but we renamed it to MSwitch, which is quite a lot better, and started marketing it. And sales very quickly took off because it was about the time that voice over IP and hosted PBX was taking off. So 2007, we just went crazy installing new systems, and we've continued growing ever since, adding more customers and more features.